Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Everything's going your way?
Oh, what a beautiful day. I don't know. It's literally waking up with the Audible.
Yeah, it's waking up to hopefully have a fantasy team alive.
Yeah. I'd say move your mic down a little bit, down by your
Whatever
chin.
happened to all the Colorado Pigskin League players? Where are they now?
We'll have to do a mini documentary. Oh, yeah. We're live.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football. I'm living in a fantasy. Football. Got everybody mad at me. Football. Cause every game I had to win. Football. I gotta be a champion. Football. I'm living in a fantasy.
That's right. It's the Audible. We're preparing you for week 16. Waiver wire football conversation. We'll go through the upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire report. But I can't believe all these quarterback decisions, Bloom. It's like, hey, Taylor Heineke's going to start.
Sure.
Hey, Sam Howell still got his job. Poor Ron Rivera.
Right.
But like, this is a situation where it's like, okay, bad quarterbacks are going to continue. So if you moved on in the fantasy playoffs, not that you were getting by with Desmond Ridder, whatever, Sam Howell, but yeah, we've got quarterback decisions that are confounding. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco's just sitting back with his feet up, man.
Yeah, I think that this week you're not going to go crazy if you survived. Well, see, there's two ways to look at it. If you survived Dak Prescott's game or if you had a bye. I think that's one of the guys you're going to look at. Patrick Mahomes, you have a little more confidence in. But Cecil, I think this is a good moment to say, try a 2-quarterback Superflex league, because what's interesting about those leagues now is at quarterback 2, you might have some tough decisions to make. You might be putting Nick Mullins in there. You might be putting Joe Flacco in there. You might be putting Taylor Heinicke in there because, as you mentioned, some of these quarterbacks, like Sam Howell, for instance, we don't even know if he's going to make it through the game. So there are questions. You might even be like Steelers fans saying, am I starting Mason Rudolph? I guess I'm starting Mason Rudolph. But these desperate times demand desperate measures, and that's what it takes to win the fantasy championship.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I kind of blocked the Mason Rudolph thing out of my mind, but I did write about it yesterday in the Newswire, and I was like, yeah, this is an upgrade. It's an upgrade, man.
Well, every starting quarterback is rosterable in 2-quarterback Superflex leagues. And as we saw with the Monday night game with Philadelphia and Seattle, where we didn't know either starter 24 hours before game time, you need to have that starter. You might have Mason Rudolph. You might have Aiden O'Connell in your lineup. You're looking at Baker Mayfield as a luxury quarterback 2 at this point. Jake Browning is a luxury quarterback 2. You might start CJ Beathard even against Tampa Bay. Why not? I think that being bold in those leagues is definitely something that's rewarded. But in 1-quarterback leagues, your quarterback decision is probably pretty simple.
Yeah, it is. And the Nick Mullins thing, like, they get some film on him. Okay, you got 1 week.
Yeah.
You got 2 weeks. Well, it is fantasy playoffs. So could Nick Mullins be the key to your fantasy championship? Well, I don't know. They're not going to have enough time to get film on him. By the time the season's over, they'll have him figured out.
And it's Detroit this week. So you're looking at a matchup that could be very good for fantasy, could be a shootout. Look, even Russell Wilson was fantasy relevant. It was garbage time, but it still counts the same. Minnesota is going to play indoors next week also against Green Bay. And we saw what Baker Mayfield did against Green Bay. The other important thing, Cease, about Nick Mullins affecting fantasy championships is now Jordan Addison is back in our lineups with Justin Jefferson back, TJ Hawkinson. All 3 of them were good plays last week. And Ty Chandler, who at this point is somebody, I mean, Cease, even if Alexander Madison is back this week, you're probably trying to find a way to put Ty Chandler in your lineup.
Well, it just makes me wonder, and that's a good transition to running backs, Bloom. Let's just go there, because I'm like, with Chandler, we'd always seen it, and it's actually his speed that's his greatest asset, and he's got balance, and he's got footwork, and we saw it all, and it's just one of those confusing things, like, the hell, Minnesota, like, all due respect to Alexander Madison, but you had the guy right there, and you didn't know because the next man up was Madison. No, it's who's better. Chandler clearly looks better.
Right, and Paul Charchian said that back in August on the couch that he thought Ty Chandler was better. I think even his confidence was shaken as Chandler didn't look great in small doses. But this could also be a situation like Devin Singletary. I think a lot of people are going to have tough Devin Singletary decisions because you can look at the trend of the team. Hopefully, C.J. Stroud will be back for Houston. Cleveland's defense is back to their ferocious form. But do you want to sit a hot player like a Devin Singletary, like a Ty Chandler, and maybe cease the indecision by these coaches helps fantasy teams because these running backs are fresh against tired defenses, and they're both playing for teams that are pushing for a playoff spot. So that's another thing I think we can be thankful for. I know that's the previous fall, winter holiday, is that so many teams are still in playoff contention. How many teams are eliminated right now? See, it's like 2 officially, 3, 4 maybe.
Yeah.
So many teams are in playoff contention. They still have a lot to play for. And I think that makes it easier because we saw last week, for instance, with the Chargers, when a team doesn't have anything to play for, it makes the outcome of the game really unpredictable.
Yeah, it makes it completely unpredictable. And that's why if you've got anything left, and if your waiver wires are open, that's why we do the waiver wire show differently when the fantasy playoffs get here. I don't play in a league where the waivers are open, but y'all might. And if you do, and if Chandler's out there, like, what are you doing? Like, that's right. The guy. That's the guy.
Yeah, there's not much to do at running back this week. Maybe some house cleaning, more preparing for week
Well, Isaiah
7.
Pacheco's back, so it's like, well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire takes a shot there. Jet McKinnon, who I always talk about. So, like, running back, other than Ty Chandler, Bloom, it's kind of the same. We've been telling you about Zamir White, you know?
Right.
And
right. I mean, the only other thing I think of is if in his maybe parting shot, Arthur Smith decides to go back to Tyler Algier as he went to Tyler Algier more last week. Bijan Robinson was not used as much, especially in the fourth quarter, and was not good. So I'm not saying to play Tyler Algier this week against Indianapolis. I am saying that at week 17, we might be looking at him as a desperation play. Likewise with Justice Hill. What's interesting with Hill, and our man iMind's Cat says, let's pour one out for Keaton Mitchell. That was hard to see, man.
Yeah.
That was rough. That was really rough.
Yeah.
It's rough. And I don't even care if you like the Ravens or you dislike the Ravens. But at this point, you hope you can freeze it so every playoff team has their full deck as of right now for the playoffs. You want to see the best version of every team play it out in the playoffs. Now, I say this as fantasy football players. We don't have nearly the best version of our team. We haven't had the best version of our team since like week 3. But I do think that Justice Hill now as the passing down back, this makes you more confident playing Gus Edwards. But if Edwards gets hurt in week 16, or remember, Baltimore's going to play Miami in week 17. So if that game turns into a shootout, do you remember the Baltimore-Miami game last year? Now, I know a lot of Miami's points came when Baltimore was up big, but you could see Justice Hill being a what-the-heck flex, even if Gus Edwards is healthy in week 17. But you're right, Cease, that's all we're relegated to, just house cleaning at the end of our roster.
Yeah, don't make me say Melvin Gordon.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the double-edged sword of writing about Keaton Mitchell yesterday. It was like, oh, I got to write about this, and then I got to write about Melvin Gordon. So I don't want to live in a world where Melvin Gordon helps me at all in my fantasy team.
Yeah, and Cease, I think that's a real quick. I think that this is another one of those times too that let's see what happens with injuries. But we've seen unlikely week 17 players. So
running backs.
So yeah, absolutely running backs. Remember Darrell Henderson even earlier this year. Running backs that get called up from the practice squad can be reasonable, relevant plays the week they get called up.
Yeah, they can be relevant plays there, and that pretty much does it for running backs, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of intrigue. I mean, this is the thing about fantasy football. At this point, there's not moves to get out ahead of. There's not anticipation. There's what we have right now, playing the hand you got dealt and hoping when the cards get turned over, you're the winner.
Yeah, how about you're the winner no matter if C.J. Stroud starts or not? Worried about Stroud, not worried when Case Keenum's in there slinging the rock by his book. I wonder if he's updated his book, right, with the Houston Texans chapter for Case Keenum. And that's why Noah Brown is one of your swing your sword guys, Bloom, to start off wide receivers. Just spend it all, get Brown, pick him up, and play him.
Yeah, if you were skeptical, which I understand, we didn't even know who was going to start for the Texans. you would have thought that Noah Brown, as the one viable downfield receiver, was going to draw a lot of attention, even though it was a good matchup against the Titans. And Noah Brown really came through. And what's nice about picking up Noah Brown is I think you can do a win-win situation here. If Nico Collins is back, then Noah Brown will avoid the coverage of Denzel Ward against Cleveland, and it may give him more opportunities as a downfield receiver. Also, keeping in mind that we don't know if CJ Stroud's going to play yet, still in concussion protocol. Obviously, that would help his outlook. If Nico Collins isn't back, you would say, well, that's bad for Noah Brown, except he's going to be that number one receiver. He's going to get those targets. And he showed last week that as the number one, he can still flourish for fantasy and help make things happen for this Houston Texans team, stay in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, stay in the playoff hunt and stay in the playoff hunt with these other wide receivers. And again, everyone we've been talking about. Are we going to see a change at quarterback with the Chargers? Why didn't we bring up Will Greer?
Right.
But Joshua Palmer's on this list, and I was like, well, they're going to bench Easton Stick. Dontavian Wicks should have already been picked up.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Trey Tucker, right? We haven't talked enough Trey Tucker on this show yet today. And, of course, our pot stoner degenerate Jason wants us to talk about the Raiders. Here you go, Jason. Here's your Raiders talk. Let's talk about some Trey Tucker.
Yeah, I think that Tucker, and it depends on how deep your leagues are, but as a what-the-heck flex, as a deep play here now is against the Kansas City Chiefs. So you know that this is going to potentially be a situation where the Raiders could get blown out. They hung in the first half against the Chiefs a few weeks back. Josh Jacobs had a long touchdown run, and then the Chiefs really closed them out in the second half. But with Trey Tucker, at least you see them using him more than Hunter Renfrow, and you see that the targets are going to be high value targets. Joshua Palmer also qualifies similarly. You would expect Buffalo to blow out the Chargers, a team that gave up on their coach and their general manager, on their organization. And it all comes back to the Raiders. Pot stoner degenerate Jason. So Palmer is a what-the-heck flex. Like you said about Dontavian Wicks, the big question about Wicks is, will Christian Watson be back? And the other thing here is you are going against Carolina, which is a defense that has limited opposing passing games. So Wicks is a wide receiver 3 flex consideration, but we've got a few variables to work out there.
Got some variables to work out at the tight end position, and away we go. Upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report. You know what we do. And, well, there's Tucker Kraft. We've talked about him plenty.
Oh, yeah.
Hunter Henry against the Broncos this week. Alert, alert. Christmas Eve, Sunday night. Alert. We're going to have to do and it's going to snow. Huh. Yeah, we may have to do recap like really, really early. We should have this conversation off air, but I'm doing the pregame show at the stadium at night, and it's going to snow, so I will have to leave early. Because it's going to snow more on the mountain than it does downtown. Anyway, Hunter Henry against the Broncos. Should already have these guys. Anyway, let's talk tight end a little bit.
Right. Tucker Kraft, and this just gives us another chance to shout out Dane Brugler, because
the best
for draft information. And what I really enjoy about getting to interview Dane every year as we lead up to the draft is he zeroes in on what is a relevant fact about a player that will help them stay in your mind. And when you saw the Packers double up on tight end, this is a classic move. And usually we say, well, one's going to work out, right? Dennis Pitta and Ed Dixon, one's going to work out, right? Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, same team. One's going to work out. In this case, both are going to work out. As Luke Musgrave, who, Cecil, you talked about him as your favorite tight end pretty early on in the draft process. And I would say that he has bore out as athletically the best tight end in this class. I think he has the most to work with athletically. And we talked about Musgrave as a guy that might have been the first tight end off the board in this very good tight end draft if he had stayed healthy in his last year. Now you have Tucker Kraft. We can look back, and what Dane Brugler pointed out, I'm going to mention this for the second time in about a week on the show, is that even though he was at South Dakota State following in the footsteps of Dallas Goedert, Alabama wanted him to transfer to Alabama. Okay, Alabama was wooing him, and he wanted to stay with his team, which also says something about the kind of person that he is. now you see what you love about Tucker Kraft. I mean, see, you hate it. You hate to do it because it's so easy. But after the catch, he looks like Rob Gronkowski. He looks like his favorite part of the game is once he has the ball in his hands and everyone's trying to tackle him. And for fantasy, I know Luke Musgrave is the guy that's going to be the downfield threat. But for fantasy, you really like that because Matt LaFleur is going to take the layups. He's going to take the easy passes. And a lot of that's going to be getting the ball in Tucker Kraft's hands. So now we can look ahead, and Jordan Love and his fantasy value, especially in those 2 quarterback super flex leagues, when you can have, hopefully, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed in the slot, Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Doubs on the outside, and you can go sometimes with 2 tight end sets. We'll see what they do with running back. I think that's the $64,000 question is what are they going to do at running back? Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. I don't think either of those guys are the answer for 2024. But we're talking about, yes, the Green Bay Packers offense as one of the most exciting rising star offenses in the league.
That's why things change pretty quickly around here. And Bloom, I love our chat room is undefeated because they're like, is Sig in the infinite void? What if a parachute just opened right now? What if you did been doing the whole show, right? And then all of a sudden
with the wind blowing my hair.
Mm-hmm.
Cecil, from the 30,000 foot view, it looks like
you'd have your hands up like this, right?
Literally 30,000 foot view of fantasy football. Mm-hmm. That's a good podcast idea. Maybe we could do a podcast where we interview people while we're skydiving together.
I told you, your guy, my guy, Gary V, says the next podcasting trend is podcast while you're doing stuff, while you're doing other things. You should be riding in a canoe. Imagine if you had a canoe and a podcast and you were canoeing with the podcast. Well, see, your podcast in a canoe.
I'm already ahead of the curve because for our YouTube friends out there, what you might not be able to see is I'm sitting on the toilet right now. Maybe. You can't tell. That's the secret.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce. Where in the world is Sigmund Bloom? We did have a great question about, from Chuck here. When your season's over, what do you do to prepare for next year's draft? Anything? Yeah. Watch college bowl games. This is the normal December time of year, right? Watch college bowl games. Watch the Senior Bowl. Watch the Senior Bowl practices. Read everything to Football Guys, and we'll keep you up to date. Of course, this is our 200 and I think we're around 220 shows so far. So we'll be about 230 by the end of the year. So it never stops, baby. So just keep staying tuned in. But that's a great thing about when your season's over. It's never over because you can start watching these and you treat some of these end of the season games like preseason games. Like who's going to be the breakout guy next year, Willie Parker, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that one thing you can do right now, if your season's over in redraft leagues, is look back at your draft and see what went wrong and see how much of it were things that you contemplated, things that are possibly foreseeable, things that maybe you didn't weight heavily enough. Did you expect Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith to turn the corner and actually have a functional, consistent offense, et cetera, et cetera? And which of those things really you couldn't do anything about? Nick Chubb going down or otherwise things that did go well, your waiver wire pickups. Maybe you might look back and say, I didn't bid enough on Kyron Williams. I didn't bid enough on Puka Nacua. I didn't bid enough on Jerome Ford. And those were the things that could have saved your season. So I think if you are out of your redraft league playoffs early, you can do a little post-mortem because I have found that in the heat of the season is when we remember with the most details and context why things happen. By the time we get to next July and August, it's down to just one data point, one ranking, and all that complexity goes away.
That goes away. But that's why we are here for you. That is correct. It is the Audible, footballguys.com. And we appreciate you all. We appreciate you for jumping on board. Gary V, future owner of the New York Jets. I might see him at the Senior Bowl. So he was at the Senior Bowl a few years ago when it was still at Lad Peoples Stadium. So
yeah. Well, see, that's the other thing about podcast ideas. For one of your last trips to the Senior Bowl, you need to seek out the people who are the people that we wouldn't have seen at the Senior Bowl 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, as it has grown into somewhat of a circus, which is why You're on one of your last few go rounds this time. The Junior Senior Bowl.
Yeah,
Have you
the
listened to
Junior
the song
Senior
yet?
Bowl.
Have you looked up "Move Your Feet"? It's a good one. Trust me.
What was this? I was supposed to listen to the song?
Junior Senior, a Danish dance hit from about 25 years ago. It's called "Move Your Feet" with a great 8-bit video. Now in honor of the Junior Senior Bowl.
Did you tell me to do that and then I forgot?
I'll remind you. It's okay. I forget everything. I'm only 97% sure of anything anymore.
Okay. All right. That's a wrap.
Yeah.
There we go. Sig, your internet connection is great today.
Yeah. Michigan internet.
Yeah.
Instead of New Orleans internet. Yeah. You know, it all balances out in the end.
There you go. And then Football Guys After Dark. Yeah, we'll get that done. Uh-oh. Jason, last trip. No. I got 3 more. I'm going to get to 20. We'll get to 20 in a row and then just kind of feel it out. It's Senior Bowl is too touristy for me now. And like when I was at the Shrine Bowl, this was 2 years ago, and I think I was watching Keontae Ingram and my buddy, your buddy, Chad Ryder, who was amongst the first at the Texas versus the Nation game with us. Chad texted me and he's like, "Are you watching this?" And I was like, "Yeah, where are you at?" You know, because I want to hang out with him. He's like, "I'm watching at home." So once you have team access, because Chad works for NFL Network, shout out NFL Network. Once you have team access, you can just watch the practices at home. Like, oh, that's what I want to watch. I want to watch the practice. I don't want to go to Veets and get hammered and watch Jack Del Rio grind on some chunky intern. Like,
You're supposed to change the name to protect the innocent.
Oh, okay. Totally not Jack Del Rio. Totally not grinding and totally not chunky. So, yeah.
Well, I think it was Sean McVay a few years back that said they didn't send the team to the Senior Bowl at all, right? I want to say it was Sean McVay. That was your first clue that maybe being there in person doesn't really have that much value for teams that are evaluating players, and that's what we're doing because we're there. We're all business, baby. We're all about our fantasy teams.
That's what it is. It's all about business. And away we go. It is the Audible. It is Cecil Lammey. It is Sigmund Bloom. Make sure you do the YouTube things like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid and help us grow the YouTube channel. We appreciate you all for doing that. He's Sigmund. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show's at the Audible saying, thanks for listening. Stay tuned. And from the void, as always, you doing the Rick James? If you're doing the Rick James, I'm going to play the Rick James.
Come to the void. Come to the void with
me. Come on. Unity. All
right.
The
void is looking into you. The void is talking to you.
And we're going to talk to it and stay frosty.